Hey YouTube, it's Kier. So, tomorrow marks the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and I touched on it a little bit in my video about August, but I think that it was a devastating event that deserves its own video. So, I'm just going to talk about it. As you all know, I don't know if I told you before, but I've never been to New Orleans. I have never physically been there, I've never physically seen it, anything like that. But ever since I was about 7 or 8 years old, I've just been completely obsessed with the city. I love it. I don't know how to explain it, except to, I don't know. I get homesick for it, and it's a place that I've never laid eyes on. So far, I have yet to come across any past life connection or anything like that. I don't know where it comes from or why I'm like that. I just am. But, when it was announced that the hurricane was going to hit for sure, because, as I mentioned in the other video, it was the same shit every single hurricane season. Everybody would sit there and they would be saying, this hurricane is going to hit New Orleans and it's going to be devastating and blah, 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 blah. And hell, even the year right before Katrina in 2004, they said the same thing, that hurricane was headed right for New Orleans, that it was going to be really, really bad, and it passed New Orleans right on by, and, there was no harm from it. But when we knew it was definitely coming, I started watching, I would flip between CNN, Fox News, I even went there, I just didn't listen to them, I was just there for the, video, and MSNBC, and I just kept flipping between them. And anytime, they would start talking about something else or a different state or whatever, I would flip to the next to see what was going on in New Orleans. And my first, what the fuck moment of that came when they said that there was a mandatory evacuation and that they were going to send in transportation to help get people out of the city. And then an hour or 2 hours later, Negan, who was the fucking mayor at the time, told them, no, we don't need the help, we don't need transportation, just stay where you are, we don't need you. And I'm going, wait a minute, this is a city that, like most major cities, has a pretty decent sized population of people living in poverty. And as anybody who has been poor knows, when you live in communities that most of the people are poor, there are not that many vehicles. Not very many people have a vehicle. Or if they do have a vehicle, it's old and unreliable, and there's no way that you're gonna, get out of fucking state with it. So that was kind of like a, what the fuck do you mean you don't need the fucking transportation kind of moment. But with everything else, that was going on and all the new developments and all that kind of shit, we really didn't have time to dwell on it, I guess. I sat there all night long and, I watched it come in, and it was really fucking eerie. I don't know how many of you watched it as it was happening, but it was really eerie to see New Orleans at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, nobody on the streets, the wind blowing and the rain starting to come in and all this shit. It was fucking creepy. But, I remember, sorry, hold on, I got that up a little loud. I can barely hear myself think, and it's not even up that loud at all. But anyway, I remember the news channels calling people, namely people that were in the quarter, from what I remember, asking them, why didn't you leave? What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And I remember people saying shit about, this is my home, and it's probably not going to be that bad anyway, and either way we can ride it out, it's fine. Well, again, these were people who were used to this as far as that went, and even though they were saying this is going to be a devastating hurricane, I don't think people took it seriously. And we're talking people that actually could get out, that had transportation to do so and actually chose to stay, which, to hear after it was all finished and the mess was there and the people were starving and dehydrating to death on the streets, to hear people talk, it was like everybody who stayed had a choice and chose not to go. That's fucking bullshit. Plain and simple, point blank, it's bullshit. But I'll get to that. Anyway, so, you know, I'm sitting there watching this, and the reporters are standing there in the city, and they're talking about everything that's going on, the little developments and all that shit. And then it starts getting really, really bad, and I'm going, oh boy. And I remember I had so much respect for Anderson Cooper by the end of that, for many reasons. But he first impressed me with his badassery, when all other reporters that were covering the story on different channels had already gone inside and stopped their, you know, standing there reporting it. And he was still standing there literally looking like his ass was about to be blown away by the fucking wind, and still standing there like, man, this motherfucker's a little badass. But, which, I don't know if y'all remember Channel 1 News, but he was pretty badass on there too. But, so, you know, the night progressed, it got worse and worse and worse, and then it stopped, and it was over, and, you know, everybody's celebrating the fact that it wasn't as bad as it could have been, and, you know, all this shit, and then early that morning, we hear the levees are being breached. And the next shot that I remember seeing was when the sun was up early that morning, and the entire fucking city looked like it was just underwater and completely destroyed. And I just sat there and I bawled. Because, you know, those original Zeus, get out of Romeo's cage now. He thinks Romeo has his toys in there. He's an ass. But anyway, I don't know if any of you watched it or if you've seen the clip since, but that first clip that I remember seeing of the city, it looked like there was no coming back from that. All you could see was water, and I'm talking, you know, covering 3, 4, 5, 6-story buildings by the looks of it, and it looked like it was everywhere. Well, then we start getting the reports of the parts of the city that weren't really hit by it, like the Garden District and the Quarter and that kind of shit. But, you know, we're hearing the 9th Ward is basically destroyed. The 8th Ward's pretty fucked up. You know, the housing projects that were in that area are fucked. And as this is going on, you know, I'm still thinking, well, yeah, but the people there, they'll send people for them, and or in the meantime they'll send food, they'll send water, you know, because 8 months prior to that there was the tsunami in Asia, and as soon as they could, our government sent provisions for those people to help them until they could get out of there. So of course, one would only reason that in our own fucking country, the same courtesy would have been shown to our citizens. Well, that day, I think it was that day that they fucking brought in the National Guard and all that, and there were still no provisions being brought in, and these people are standing on bridges and they're trying to get rescued, and we're talking, you know, elderly people, babies, children, and they're begging for fucking help, and nothing's happening. And I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, but if they can get the guard in there, they've got to be bringing food in, you know, and it just didn't happen. And then as the days wore on, it just got more and more fucking sickening. It was horrible, the shit that was going on there. I mean, everybody sat there and talked about, oh, everyone's looting, blah, 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 blah. Well, the truth of the matter is, and you can go on the internet, see videos, and find this out for yourself, the majority of the looters who were just looting shit, not looting food and water, because I'm sorry, that wasn't looting, they were trying to fucking live. But were looting things like television sets and that kind of thing, they were public service workers. A lot of them, I wouldn't say the majority, but a good sized chunk of them were police officers. So, you know, there's the truth on that. And like I said, you can go find that out for yourself. The National Guard, you know, of course, we all saw them fucking shooting people down in the streets. We all saw the way that whole thing was handled. But for me, the fucking worst part of it was we're sitting there watching live television, and I'll never forget, this one woman is sitting there talking to a reporter, and she was bawling, and she's, you know, saying, my baby hasn't had any water to drink, anything in 2 days, and he's really sick, and I'm really worried about him. And on live TV, she tried to wake her baby up, and her baby was dead. And then, you know, there was the line of wheelchairs, of elderly people with the sheets over them where they had passed away. It was devastation on such a scale that I don't think I'll ever see anything like it. I hope I never see anything like it again in my lifetime. And for me, the worst part of all is that most of the people that were sitting there waiting for help, dehydrating to death, could have been helped. If you can send the fucking National Guard into the city, you can get food and water into the fucking city. And our government chose not to do that. You know, you saw the fucking video of Bush flying around the fucking city and then just disappearing. He did nothing. Like, how can you sit there and watch what we were watching and see all of these people who are sitting there fucking dying, human beings, and just fly on by and not do anything for 3 more fucking days? It was disgusting. And then, you know, as time went on, and more documentaries and shit were coming out that used footage shot by the people who were actually there, you found out that they had people literally rounded up in pens like animals, and they were letting them just sit there and die. And I remember watching one documentary where I think it was Anderson Cooper that was like, no, I'm gonna film this. And they had a, I don't know if it was a cop or a guardsman or somebody, but he was like, you film that and you will be arrested. You do not film that. They could only film certain areas because, you know, they didn't want you to see what was going on. And it was just unbelievable, the shit that happened down there. And then, you know, people are finally rescued, those that lived through the no water, no food, no nothing for, I think it was 5 days, 4 or 5 days before anybody came in. And the fact that it was over 100 degrees every single day at that time. Those who lived were finally rescued, and many of them still have not been able to go back home. The government started immediately taking in donations and all that shit. And the company that the government hired, because they were hired by our government to rebuild and do all that shit and put the money to use for the city, all of their higher-ups in the company got a major bonus that year. And many thousands of dollars still to this day are not accounted for. They just disappeared. Well, gee, I wonder where the fuck they went to, you know? So, to this day, most of the 9th Ward looks like a fucking ghost town. It's, you know, nothing has been done. And all of the money that the people put toward it and all that shit, it did not go to the city at all. And nobody said anything. Like, the entire incident was the most disgusting miscarriage of justice I have seen in my lifetime. And it all played out on national television with the entire country watching, and nobody said anything. In fact, a lot of people wanted to sit there and blame the people who were starving and fucking dehydrating to death on the street for not leaving, when many of those people were poor and had no fucking way out. I know that, you know, that's hard to believe, but it does happen. Just the whole thing to this day, it infuriates me and breaks my heart to even fucking talk about it. I cannot imagine what the people who were there and suffered through all that still go through to this day. Because they have to have PTSD. I'm sorry. There's no way that they got out of that without PTSD. Bodies floating, you know, all over the fucking place. Babies dying. Old people dying. Like, there's no way that they got out of that okay. I'm sorry. When I was writing Castles Made of Sand, because at the end of that book, Liz is in New Orleans, I didn't really touch on that too much because I was like, you know, that's not what this book is about. But then when I was writing Beauty and the Beast, I at first I wasn't gonna write about it, and then I was like, you know, these two vampires, they settled New Orleans, it's their city, blah 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 blah. I cannot gloss over this. But, you know, there's still a part of me that's like, if I tell the truth about how I really feel about this, it may not go over too well with some people. And then I was like, yeah, I don't really give a fuck. So I was able to kind of get my frustration out, kind of, over that in that book. But it's still, I don't know. It was just a disgusting thing that our government did. And, you know, like I said, everything that I talked about in this video, you can go for yourself, and you can look it up, and you can discover the truthfulness of it for yourself. I don't expect you to take my word on anything, you know. I've even looked over the documents pertaining to the money that was donated and how it was misspent, and how the city saw very little benefit from any of it, and all that shit. You can go online and you can see pictures of what the parts of the city that were hit hardest look like today, and you will see that very little was done. And you know, here we are 10 years later, and Obama he's either already went there for the anniversary, or he's going tomorrow for the anniversary. And I'm sure he's going to do the, you know, walking through the devastated parts of the city and talking to people and all that. And it's like, you know, that's all fresh and good. And I know it didn't happen during his administration, but he still could have made the choice at any point during his presidency to do something for the city to help rebuild. But, you know, he didn't. So why go and talk about it now? I don't know. Maybe now that it's been 10 years and people are talking about it again, maybe, just maybe, something will be done and the people will actually be helped, and the fucking houses will actually be rebuilt, and people can actually come home after a decade. Who knows? But yeah, I just, like, every year I watch the same documentaries and I see the same shit that, you know, I saw when it happened, and it never gets easier to look at or to swallow. It was a horrible thing that happened. And I just feel like a lot of people don't talk about it. You know, I post about it on Facebook every year and I get little to no response whatsoever. People do not talk about it. So maybe now that it's been a decade, and, you know, with our obsession with fucking media and all that shit, the media's making a hype about it, maybe people will get engaged in this again and be interested in the truth and start asking why the fuck nothing was done. I don't know. As far as the people who lived through it, like I said, I can't imagine what the fuck they went through or what they're still going through, because I don't care how much time has passed. It has to weigh on them, the shit that they saw and the shit that they endured during that time. And to know that from the way that it looked, nobody gave a damn. Everybody talked about it for a couple of weeks. You know, everybody talked, and that's about as far as it went. And I can't imagine what that must have felt like for those people. So I guess if y'all take anything away from this video, it's that if you believe the Zeus, stop tearing up my couch. Thank you. If you believe the version of events that was given to you by the media, please go and research things on your own. YouTube is a great source of documentaries that are mostly or completely made up of footage that was filmed by the people who were there, not by, you know, MSNBC or CNN or anything like that, but by the people. Oh damn, what is the name of that one? It's so good. There's like 4 parts to it here on YouTube. After the Levee broke, maybe, might be. It's a really, really, really good documentary. And there is a book by that name as well, by a woman who was there during the entire thing. And my baby sister read it, and she was 9 when Katrina happened, and all she knew was that I wouldn't shut up about it for a month. But that book really opened her eyes, and you know, she started asking me questions about what happened and that kind of thing, and I showed her videos and shit like that. So that book, I don't know if it's like for younger readers, but it is a really good book if you want to check that out. Just, you know, research stuff on your own about it, and maybe you'll change your opinion about the way that things happen there. And please don't forget that the city is there's still parts of the city that are completely devastated by this, that looks the same as it did 10 years ago. And there really are still people who have been unable to go home. I don't think we should ever forget what happened to the people of New Orleans during that entire week. I'll get off my soapbox now. Just, you know, think about it, I guess. I hope you all have a beautiful week, and I hope you all remember to smile.